Now, having given some good reasons for setting moral relativism aside, and even if you don't think they're good reasons, we're going to set them aside. I think we're going to find a better answer in moral objectivism. Remember, our question is how do we decide where to apply these moral principles, or when the moral principles are true, when they're false? Maybe they're more general characteristics of, moral moral principles, of moral situations that's going to determine this. And I think we're going to find a couple of answers in moral objectivism. And basically, there are really two major types of theories that are moral objectivist theory. One theory, or one class of theories, is known as the consequentialism or consequentialist theories. And notice you have the word consequence in there. And the idea is that what makes an action right or wrong is the value of the consequences of that action and the alternatives to that action. That determines whether the action is right or wrong, whether the value of the consequences, the goodness exuded or lack of or less evil of the action versus its consequences, measured by some value, some objective good, will determine whether the action is right or wrong. So that maybe in certain circumstances, the value of sacrificing one life to save 5 lives will be, will be of a higher value. The consequences will be much better than the alternative of not saving those lives, letting it go straight. But the idea is consequentialism or consequentialist theories will help us answer that question. And in fact, I'm going to leave it as an exercise at the end for you to figure out, well, which moral principles would consequentialism support, and to explain how they would support that. I'm going to delve into that a little bit more deeply, but I just want you to get the distinction between consequentialism and the alternative, which is sometimes called rule-based morality or duty-based morality. We have a fancy term in philosophy called a deontological theory or deontology. And according to a rule or a duty-based theory, it's not the consequences, the value of the consequences of the action and the alternatives of the action that makes it right or wrong, but rather there's something in the nature of the action itself that determines whether it's right or wrong. And in particular, there are these things in the world, moral duties, moral requirements, which can be captured by a set of rules, moral rules, that determine whether an action is right or not. So there's something about the action itself that, and again, in thinking about that, I want you to think, is it going to be a deontological based reason? Is it going to be a rule-based reason that's going to trump the consequential based answer in the particular examples? And if we look at that, I'm going to dive a little bit more deeply in a second into that, but I just want you to get you to understand the difference between a version of consequentialism versus deontology, a rule or a duty-based morality. And we're going to see that depending on where you are with either of these, we're going to say a lot more about them, but you're going to see that there's not a black and white distinction in them, and it's not clear which one you're going to pick over the other. Because let me just foreshadow what I'm about to tell you is there are some advantages that consequentialism has as a theory, and there are some advantages that deontology has, and they're really at opposite extremes on the scale.